Okay. All right. So let's learn. So no, we're gonna officially this is a new mitzvah every week. But you know what? Sometimes you got to break the rules a little bit. So I know Parshas Yisro has a lot of mitzvahs, and Gid HaNashe was a mitzvah that we spoke about a couple weeks ago last year. But you know what? I've mentioned before that every mitzvah is targing mitzvah atluyimba. So that means there's a lot to unpack in every mitzvah. So I figured we'll learn maybe another side to the mitzvah of Gid HaNashe, and it is negated to Parshas Yisro as well, as you'll see. Okay, so we'll begin like this. In Marmukah number 1 is a Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Aleph Beis Amud Aleph. So the Mishnah over there is talking about in Sanhedrin the sort of the procedure of a din Torah. And so we know when it comes to Dinei Torah, there's sort of basically two categories. But there are you have Dinei Mamanis, right, monetary cases, Chesed Mishpat, and then Dinei Nefashis, capital cases. So the Mishnah is talking about the different types of, halachas of like the procedural inyanim of Dinei Mamanis versus Dinei Nefashis. So the Mishnah says like this: a klal, Aleph Beis Amud Aleph. Dinei Mamanis, when it comes to Mamanistic cases, monetary cases, so Danin B'Yayim B'Gayrim B'Layla. Whatever the case may be, whether it be monetary or capital, there's always two parts to the din Torah in halacha. There's what's called tchilas hadin, and then there's what's called gemar hadin. So again, we'll speak a little bit about, what exactly tchilas hadin means. But on a simple level, tchilas hadin means the masa umatan, the back and forth, the investigation, when the dayanim are trying to figure out the case, figure out the different sides, figure out the svaras that would apply to the case, the masa matan, I don't know what the translation masa matan is, whatever, like this, when you for the din Torah, the give and take, the give and take of the din Torah, and then you have what's called the gemar din. The Gemara classifies exactly what the Gemar din is. It's not even so pashut exactly, but it means the psak. Rebbe Bezin paskins, this guy's chayiv, this guy's pater, whatever the case is, that's the Gemar din. So the Mishnah says like this: Dinei Mamanis. When it comes to monetary cases, danin b'yayim, the tchilas din, the beginning of the din, the masa umatan, the litigation itself has to be during the day. The goymin b'layla, but the Gemar din during monetary cases could be at night. So it has to start by the day, and then it could end at night. The nefashis, when it comes to capital cases, dana b'yayim v'garim b'yayim. Both the tchilas din and the Gemar din has to be b'yayim. That's the halach of the Mishnah. Now the Gemara in Marmukah number 2 in Sanhedrin, Aleph Beis Amud Aleph, explains the background of why this is. Now the Gemara that we're quoting over here is specifically focusing on the dinei mamanis halacha. Again, dinei mamanis monetary cases, tchilas din has to be by the day. And then the Gemar din could be at night as well, but it has to start by the day and then it could end at night. So minon emili. Says the Gemara, how do we know this? What's the makar? So says the Gemara, Amar Reb Chia bar Papa. So Reb Chia bar Papa said, Amar Kra. It's a pasuk in the parsha v'shavtu asam b'chol eis. So this is talking about when the dayanim were set up. Yisro gives Moshe the eitzah of setting up a court system. So it's describing the dayanim, which are primarily dealing with dinei mamanis. So it says v'shavtu asam b'chol eis, that they should be able to deal to paskin shilos for the people b'chol eis at all times. So that indicates that it could be done at all times, means day and night. Ihachi, so says the Gemara, 1 second. Well, if that pasuk is talking about dinei mamanis and it says b'chol eis, so then tchilas dinami, then not only could the psak be at night, but the beginning of the din Torah, tchilas din, should also be able to be at night as well. It's b'chol eis. So says the Gemara, no, kiderava, because even though the pasuk says v'shavtu asam b'chol eis, there's another pasuk which we have to sort of balance this with, which is something that the Rava said. The Rava Rami, because Rava pointed out a stira. Ksiv, it says in pasuk again what we just quoted, v'shavtu asam b'chol eis. That again, dinei mamanis, this pasuk indicates b'chol eis, that they should, v'shavtu means dinei mamanis, and it could be done at all times. Mitzad sheni uksiv, but Rava pointed out, but there's another pasuk which says v'haya b'yayim hinchilu es banav. It's talking about the halachas of Yerusha, which are monetary cases. That's the monetary shaila, and the pasuk talks about the bezdin v'haya b'yayim hinchilu es banav, that they're manchil, they paskin, the Yerusha should go to this person or to that person, and the pasuk just off the cuff talks about this, that it's being done by the day. Why? Why is it v'haya b'yayim hinchilu es banav? The answer is because this pasuk is indicating that mamanistic shaila dinei mamanis has to be done by the day. So that's Rava's stira. So on the one hand it says v'shavtu asam b'chol eis at all times. Mitzad Sheni v'haya b'yom hin chilas banav. So which way does it go? So okay, it's how do we work it out? So it says that's the halacha that yom l'tchilas din and laila l'gemar din. That's the halacha. So during the day when it says v'haya b'yom hin chilas banav, that means the tchilas din. And when it says v'shavtos and b'choleis, that's talking about the gemar din. That's the makar. That's the halacha of the Mishnah and Sanhedrin. Fine. Okay, so now again we're not ready yet to what this has anything to do with Kiddush HaChadosh, but slowly but surely. Next step, Marmukah number 3 is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Okay, this Gemara is again, sort of building off of this idea that we just mentioned that Dinim Amanis has this halacha that the Tchilas Din has to be by day, and the Gemara Din could be at any time, but the Tchilas Din has to be by the day. And the Gemara Sanhedrin, as we're going to see, tells us that this is not just L'chatchila, this is B'diavad. In other words, even if let's say Beis Din went against the rules and they started it in Torah at night, it's null and void. It has no halachic significance. Any edus or edus we'll talk about soon, but any shakavatari, any masamatan, any tainas that the Bali Dinim claimed during the Din Torah, and usually they can't just go back on what they said and claim something else. If a Din Torah was done by night, if Tchilas Din was at night, the whole thing was just a joke. It does not work. The Diavad as well. And that's his Gemara. So you'll see in a second. The Gemara Sanhedrin again, Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Ton Rabbanim. The rabbis taught. Again, until now we've been talking about, again, Dinim Malminis or Dinim Nefashis. Now the Gemara gives an example of another type of Din Torah, which although it's not monetary, we'll see in a second, halachically it has the same rules and regulations as monetary cases, which is again, the Tchilas Din has to be by day, and then the Gemara Din could be at night, but the Tchilas Din has to be by day. Says the Gemara like this, Ton Rabbanim, Eima Avir Nes Hashana El B'Yom. Beis Din also has to convene to figure out whether any particular year is going to be a leap year, right? They don't have a set calendar. It was based on cheshbainis that they had in terms of, there's all different cheshbainis that they could have in order to make a leap year. So they have to convene a Din Torah to do it. So says the Mishnah, says the Brisa, Ein Ma'avris Hashana El B'Yom. The Din Torah, when it comes to making a leap year, has the halachic significance of Dinim Amis, for whatever reason, and just like Dinim Amis has to be by day, so the Din Torah for an Ibra year also has to be by day. Ve'im Ibra B'Layla, it says the Brisa, and let's say they violated this, and they did the Din Torah at night, Ein Mubaris. Doesn't work. It's not Mubar. Ve'im Akashnas Achaydish El B'Yom. And says the Mishnah, says the Brisa the same thing. So too, a Beis Din that's convening in order to be Makavish the Chaydish is also, even though it's not monetary, but it has the same quality, it has the same halacha as monetary shaila, which has to be Tchilas Din has to be by day, and therefore Kiddush Chaydish also has to be by day. Ve'im Kiddush B'Layla, if they did it at night, Einam Kiddush. It's not. Amar Rabba Maikra, so says Rabba, what's the source of this, that somehow these Dinei Torah of Zmanim, of Kiddush Chaydish and so on, is somehow connected to the Dinei Torah of Mamanis? How do we know that they should have the same regulations? So it says the Gemara like this. It says in Pasuk, Tiku v'chaydish shofar b'kesel yom chagenu. Blow the shofar on the hidden yontif. Eza chag shechaydish miskasabay. And what is that talking about? That's talking about what yontif is hidden. In other words, what yontif is on is a day when the moon is hidden. That's going to be the first day of the month. The only yontif that's the first day of the month is Rosh Hashanah. It's the Rosh Hashanah. Uksiv. So it says regarding the establishment of the new year, which is basically Kiddush HaChadosh on steroids. So it says Ki Chaykli Yisraelu Mishpat Elokei Yaakov, and it's called Mishpat. It's called Mishpat. It's called a judgment like Dinei Mamanis. Ma Mishpat B'Yom, Av Kiddush HaChadosh B'Yom. Okay, so that's what we see from this third Marmukah, that this halacha of what of Dinei Mamanis that has to be done B'Yom, Tchilas Din has to be done B'Yom. It's not just a Chatchila. This is B'Diavad. And certainly by Dinei Nefashis as well, that everything has to be by Yom. It's not just a Chil, it's B'diavad too. Okay. Now, next Nakuda. What does it mean exactly, Tchilas Din? So I defined the beginning of a Din Torah before as Masu Mata, the give and take, the back and forth, the Reuven and Shimon claiming their arguments, the Beis Din listening to them, figuring out the Shilas, investigating, asking questions, Masu Mata. But very often there's something that even precedes the questioning and back and forth and svaras and arguing between the Dayanim, and that's Kabbalah Seidas. Right? There's, let's say, someone bring, if there's a Din Torah, so the first thing to bring to the table is witness testimony. It's the most chashuv thing. So what about Kabbalah Seidas? Is Kabbalas Eidos considered to be Tchilas Din? Or is that something that's altogether like before Ma'aseh Matan? Is that before the Din Torah? Is that considered the beginning of the Din Torah? The nafkamin is going to be, again, in this halacha, Tchilas Din has to be Bayam, even B'diavad. So what about Kabbalas Eidos? Is that considered to be Tchilas Din as well? So Maramukah number 4 is the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Chaf Hey Beis. The Gemara is talking about, again, we just saw in Maramukah number 3 that Kiddush HaChodesh, the Bezdin convening for Kiddush HaChodesh, Tikku B'Chodesh Shofar B'Kesel Yechagenu Ki Choik L'Yisrael Mishpat L'Elokei Yaakov has the same status as a Din Torah of Dini Mamnis. Ad Kedei Kach, the Gemara said that just like Dini Mamnis has to be Bayom, so too Kiddush HaChodesh has to be Bayom. So the Gemara Rosh Hashanah in Maramukah number 4 is explaining this in a little bit more detail. So it says the Gemara like this: when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, there's again, it follows the same basic pattern. Preferably, there's Eidim, right? Witnesses see the new moon, they come to Bezdin, they testify. Step 1, and then Bezdin begin to question the Eidim. Maybe they talk amongst themselves. Does it make sense in the cheshbon of the month that this is Taka Rosh Chodesh? Does it make sense amongst themselves? And then they'll make the psak, which is Mekudesh Mekudesh. So says the Gemara like this: Chakiras Eidim. So the Gemara mafreshes without a shayla. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Chakiras Eidim Ketchilas Din. Says the Gemara, when it comes to investigating the Eidim and others Kabbalas Eidos to accept testimony regarding the new moon, that's called Tchilas Din. That's called Tchilas Din. Mekudesh Mekudesh Gemar Din. And when Bezdin says Mekudesh Mekudesh, that's called the Gemar Din. So the Gemara, basically the Gemara says black and white that again we know what we know is already established that Tchilas Din, whatever the beginning of a Din Torah means, that has to be Bayom. Gemar Din could be Belayla by Din Mamnis, right? By Din Nefashis, even the Gemar Din has to be Belayla. Has to be Bayom. Fine. So Tchilas Din has to be Bayom. Aleph. Beis, and Tchilas Din has to be Bayom, even B'diavad. And now we have the Gemara Rosh Hashanah telling us, and we know that Kiddush HaChodesh is compared to the Nimamis. And now the Gemara Rosh Hashanah is telling us that, by the way, when it comes to Kabbalas Eidos for Kiddush HaChodesh, that's called Tchilas Din. So putting this all together, L'chara would be pashut that Bezdin is dealing with Reuven and Shimon come to Bezdin. They're fighting over, he owes me $100, he doesn't owe me $100, whatever, Dini Mamonis, and there's Eidos involved. So Tchilas Din for Dini Mamonis has to be by Yom even B'diavad, and Kabbalas Eidos means Tchilas Din. That's called the beginning of the Din Torah. So that means that Bezdin are only able to receive testimony by Yom, and if Bezdin violates that, and they receive testimony and Kabbalas Eidos even Malayla, it's not Eidos, it didn't work. Again, Tchilas Din is only by Yom even B'diavad, and Kabbalas Eidos is Tchilas Din. Follow? So far so good. Here's the Pella. The Rashbam in Maseches Bava Basra is Meforsh not like this. If you take a look at Maramukah number 5, the Rashbam in Bava Basra, Kuf Yudal Amud Aleph. It's in the context of a whole sugya of Gid HaNashe Dayan. It's a complicated sugya. But just one line out of the Rashbam over there. The Rashbam writes, Kuf Yudal Amud Aleph. And the Rishonim in many places quote this Rashbam. In the Rishonim it was a well-known shita. Umiyu, says Rashbam, Bezdin she'idu lefneim eidos b'layla. Just straight up, he says, if you have a Bezdin, and there was testimony that was presented to Bezdin at night, Eidos Gemurihi, that's considered 100% Eidos, V'chayil Madon l'machar b'yayim. And then when they want to have a Maso Matan, an actual, dealing with the Eidos that they heard, which obviously that Tchilas Din that has to be by day, they can use the testimony that they heard the previous night. So Zakta Rashbam, basically black and white, that Kabbalas Eidos could be done at night. Now the Rashbam is not going to disagree with the concept that Tchilas Din has to be by day. He says that they are Makabal Eidos at night, and then tomorrow they could deal with it. So clearly he's agreeing that the dealing, the Masu Matan, the back and forth, that has to be by day. That's the first mission of Rosh Hashanah we saw, that Dinim Amnis Tchilas Din has to be by day. But Zok Rashbam, Tchilas Din, that's the Masu Matan. Kabbalas Eidos, that's not Tchilas Din, that's something else altogether. That precedes Tchilas Din. That can be done at night. So the question is, Rishonim make this point down in 1 second. This doesn't make any sense. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah, Maramukah number 4, told us explicitly when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, Chakiras Eidim Kitchilas Din. Those are words black and white. That Kabbalas Eidus is itself called the beginning of the Din Torah. And the beginning of a Din Torah has to be by day. Mekudesh was the Gemara Din. So, again, here's the problem. Again, we have all these facts lined up. Tchilas Din has to be by day, even b'diavad. And the Gemara Shana says, Kabbalah, accepting testimony Kabbalas Eidus is Tchilas Din. So that means that Kabbalas Eidus has to be by day, even b'diavad. Zok the Rashbam, you could be Makabal Eidus at night. And by the way, the Rashbam doesn't even say it's b'diavad, really. He says, Bezdin, She'id Lufneim, Eidus B'layla. He doesn't say that they did something wrong in particular. If they were Makabal Eidus at night, if that's what happens, that situation, then fine, they can use it the next day. So how does this work? Okay, so you follow? It's good? Okay. So there is one suggestion. Most Rishonim, when they quote this Rashbam and they deal with it, they usually eventually reject the Rashbam, but their way of dealing with the Rashbam is basically that the Rashbam is probably just going against our Gemara. In other words, our Gemara in Marmukah number 3 said that Tchilas Din has to be by day, even b'diavad. Right? That was what the Brisa that the Gemara in Sanhedrin quoted, that a Bezdin that sits down and deals with Iber Hashana or Kiddush HaChodesh, does the Masamat and so on, by nighttime, it's nothing. It was a joke. Nothing happened. So the Rishonim do quote, and it's not. The truth is, it's not even so clear whether it actually exists. But some Rishonim quote reference a Yerushalmi. There's a Yerushalmi maybe somewhere that says that this whole idea that a Tchilas Din, at the beginning of a Din Torah has to be by day, that's only lechatchila. But with the Evid, it's okay even if it's at night. So this is showing some suggests is, well, listen, the Rashbam is not disagreeing. Tchilas Din means Kabbalas Eidus too. So what is Rashbam? How is Rashbam saying that Kabbalas Eidus could work at night? So probably he means b'diavad, and the Rishalmi says that b'diavad Tchilas Din can be done at night as well. But then they dismiss the Rashbam offhand because the Ma'aseh of the Bavli is not like that. So this is the problem. Again, if these are the facts that at least according to the Bavli, Tchilas Din by day, and that halacha by day is even b'diavad, and Kabbalas Eidus is Tchilas Din. That means that Kabbalas Eidus is only by day, even b'diavad. So what's the Rashbam talking about that you can be Makabal Eidus b'layla? It's connected all these cheshbonos. Yeah.
The one in Marmukah number 4 says Chakiras Eidim. There's no difference between Chakiras Eidim and just being Makabal Eidus.
So the pashtus is not like that. First of all, even in the Rashbam himself, the Rishonim assume now like that. When the Gemara says Chakiras Eidim, we find this in many places in Sanhedrin Grada. The word Chakiras Eidim, even though it sounds like after the Eidim said their thing, now we're being Chakir v'Dairish by ourselves. The language of Chakiras Eidim means asking questions to the Eidim to bring out their testimony. That's what Chakiras Eidim mean. Like the Mishnah in Sanhedrin talks about that there's such a thing as Chakir and Drisha. That idea is in the context of questioning the Eidim, not mitzad masamatam, but just to try to bring out their Eidos more. So Chakiras Eidim means another word for basically Kabbalas Eidos. It's the same idea. So that's the problem. Okay.
Why can't we say that Rosh Hashanah is talking about only for Rosh Hashanah, only for the...
Very good. That's the answer. I think that's the answer. Another point is like this. You have to explain why. In others, okay. Here, let's go back. So what's the possible suggestion for the Rashbam? Huh?
What's the differentiation between?
That's what we're gonna have to explain. Okay, so it's like this. The Rashbam. Let's break this down. So here's the possible suggestion for the Rashbam. Again, all the Rishonim are making the following assumption, which is fair, and it's just all the Gemaras line up like this. But again, Tchilas Din is b'yayim, Tchilas Din is b'diavad. Those are Gemaras across the board. Fine. And they're assuming that we have another Gemara Rosh Hashanah, which says that Chakiras Eidim or Kabbalas Eidus for Kiddush HaChodesh is Tchilas Din. Okay, so once it's Tchilas Din, then it's in that category that has to be b'yayim even b'diavad. Here's a suggestion. The Rashbam very likely holds that that's true, but only Kabbalas Eidus for Kiddush HaChodesh is considered to be Tchilas Din. In other words, the Rashbam Shita is that there is no just rule across the board, Kabbalas Eidus is Tchilas Din. What is Kabbalas Eidus? Is Kabbalas Eidus the beginning of the Din Torah, or is it a Hakdama to the Din Torah? Well, says Rashbam, really, on a normal situation, by Dini Mominus even, Kabbalah Seidus is before the Din Tar begins. That's why the Rashbam says they can be done even Balayla. Because Tchilas Din has to be Bayon. Kabbalah Seidus is not Tchilas Din. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah said before, Shchakiras Eidim is Tchilas Din. That's talking about the Eidus of Kiddush HaChodesh. The Eidus of Kiddush HaChodesh, that's taka true. Kiddush HaChodesh, receiving, hearing witness testimony for Kiddush HaChodesh, that the Gemara says is Tchilas Din. And then you're right. If it's Tchilas Din, there better be Bayon. But the Rashbam in Baba Basra is not talking about Kiddush HaChodesh. He's talking about Eidus in Baba Basra. He's talking about Choshen Mishpat. Over there is no Gemara that says that Eidus of anything outside of Kiddush HaChodesh is Tchilas Din. And so this is going to be we'll see in a second, explain why, but this is going to be the Mahalach in the Rashbam. That the Rashbam is agreeing to everything lining up in the Bavli. He's not ignoring the Bavli because of some, Yushalmi that might not exist. All the Rashbam is saying is that connecting Tchilas Din to Kabbalas Eidus, we only find that regarding Kiddush HaChodesh. And Kiddush HaChodesh, the Eidus of Kiddush HaChodesh is fundamentally different than any other types of Eidus. And only Kiddush HaChodesh Deke Eidus is an Eidus which is defined as Tchilas Din. Any other Eidus is not Tchilas Din. Any other Eidus is a Hakdama before the Din Tar begins. And Ma'aseh Matan is the beginning of the Din Tar. That has to be Bayan. But the Hachana to that, which is Kabbalah Seidus, that could be Balayla as well. Why is the Din Tar of Kiddush HaChodesh fundamentally different? So there's a Chiddush from the Avnei Nezer. Now the Avnei Nezer says this on his own, but in Marmukah number 6 there's a tshuva from Avnei Nezer in Even Ezer, Kuf Aleph, and he uses this side and he runs with the ball very, very far. So even if you go through that tshuva, even if you don't necessarily want to go as far as he takes it, but the very core of the side of the Avnei Nezer has a lot of makars to it. I'll give a little bit like this. One of the pasuk says regarding Kiddush HaChodesh, again going back to Parashas Bay, the fundamental mitzvah. V'yamar Hashem al Moshe v'al Aaron be'eretz mitzrayim leimar hachodesh lechem Rosh Chodosh. Right? That Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, hachodesh lechem. This is your month. Hachodesh lechem Rosh Chodosh. So Chazal said like this. There's two drushes in Chazal. It's funny. Usually mitzvahs are just to Moshe. Over here it's V'yamar Hashem al Moshe v'al Aaron be'eretz mitzrayim. Why Moshe and Aaron? So the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that this is not a usual situation. Usually the mitzvah is being told to Moshe, and Moshe is the Rebbe, and he teaches it all Klal Yisrael. In this case, Moshe was not just the Rebbe. Moshe and Aaron were the Bezdin. They were actually the first Bezdin. So Moshe and Aaron over here, and the Gemara says, and if it's two, it means you have to have three, because Ein Bezdin Shok, you don't have a Bezdin that's even numbers. Even though there's no third person mentioned, it's basically as if there is a third person mentioned. So Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'al Aaron means that Hashem is talking to the Bezdin. That's the Gemara. And from that assumption that the Gemara makes, that Moshe and Aaron over here are not functioning just as the Nevi'im and the ones that give us all of Torah. It's like the Rebbeinu Shalom talking to Bezdin over here. The Gemara learns out from there, for example, that the only type of Bezdin that's allowed to do Kiddush HaChodesh is a level of Moshe and Aaron to Bezdin, which means it's Sanhedrin Haggadah. So we take that seriously, that Moshe and Aaron means Bezdin. Okay, Aleph. Beis. The pasuk then continues. Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, "Hachodesh hazeh lochem." Hachodesh hazeh lochem. What does it mean hazeh? Hazeh is always a word that means that you could point to something. It's a visual. So Chazal say, that word means kezer re'eva kadesh. Kezer re'eva kadesh means that Kiddush HaChodesh can't be, preferably, it should not be something that's just with calculations. There has to be a visual. You have to see the new moon and point to it. Kezer re'eva kadesh. So what does that mean practically? So Chazal say that's what it means, that Adam come to testify that they saw the new moon. You have to have a visual that there's a new moon, and then you can be Mekadesh L'Chodesh. So Frek Avnei Nezer, 1 second. Those two Chazals don't seem to go together. On the one hand, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'al Aaron means that whatever is about to be said is commanded to the Bezdin. But then what is commanded to the Bezdin? Kezer Reva Kadesh. They have to see the new moon and sanctify it. They're not seeing the new moon. Adam saw the new moon, and Bezdin hears the testimony. And they're mechuyev to believe it. Okay, that's the din of Vedas, we understand. But they're not seeing anything. So mainly you want to tell me that the Adam saw it. But the pasuk is of Yom Shalom Moshe HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. So what's going on? So Zok Avnei Nezer Chiddush. Take a look at Marmukah number 6. So again, Avnei Nezer and Ebenezer Kuf Aleph. Kiddush HaChaydish Tetzarch L'Kadish Al Pi Re'iyah. The idea of Kiddush HaChaydish that has to be based on Re'iyah. Milasiv Hazeh Kizeh Reva Kadesh. So Frek Avnei Nezer Umamel Riyas Eidim. So what is the Eidim seeing it? What does it have to do with how could Moshe and Aaron, the Bezdin, be Mekayim their Chiyuv of HaChaydish Hazeh Lochem by hearing witness testimony? Val Karchach says to Avnei Nezer, this is just one of his rayas. This is the chiddush of Kabbalah Seidus when it comes to Kiddush HaChaydish. Usually when Eidus works is what? Is that there was the Eidim saw something. They saw Reuven borrow money from Shimon. They saw Reuven kill Shimon, whatever the Eidus is. And then that was a Riyah. And then they're coming as Eidim to testify to Bezdin, and now Bezdin hears. And there is a Kabbalah Seidus, is a Haggadah Seidus, and now Bezdin knows Mitzat Shmiyah. Okay, fine. But says Avnei Nezer, not so when it comes to Kiddush HaChaydish. The Yisrael of Kiddush HaChaydish is that when Eidim come to Bezdin to testify that they saw the new moon, they're bringing that Re'iyah to Bezdin. Bezdin and the Dayanim are merging as one. They become one entity. The Re'iyah of the Eidim becomes the Re'iyah of the Bezdin through them hearing the Eidus of the Eidim. Therefore, says the Avnei Nezer, Kizeri V'Kadesh is a kiyum in Bezdin themselves, and Moshe and Aaron, through the Kabbalah Seidus, they themselves become royim, they become Eidim to the Eidus, to the Kiddush HaChaydish. Avnei Nezer uses this in many ways. He handles even like Eid Nasadayin in this context. It's a whole, it's Avnei Nezer, a lot of Marmakamis. He even wants to suggest maybe this could apply to other types of Eidus as well, but this is where the Indian is. And he goes on, he says another interesting rayu, B'Yalkut, in the Midrashim, we find this, that Kairei L'Eid HaChaydish, that when Eidim come to Bezdin to testify that they saw the new moon, in Chazal, they're called Shluchei HaChaydish. They're called the Shluchim of Bezdin to sanctify, to be made. What Shluchim of Bezdin? They're coming as Eidim. Why are they called Shluchei Bezdin? The answer is they're called Shluchei Bezdin is because even though they were not sent by Bezdin, but after the fact, once they come and testify, then they taka as Eidim, they're functioning as extensions of Bezdin. Because Bezdin are the ones that need to be Rayas HaChaydish. They need to see the Levana, but they didn't see it. They see it through the Eidim. And so the Eidim and the Dayanim become one. With this Yisrael of the Rashba, of the Avnei Nezer, then the sheet of the Rashbam is very, very clear. Nowhere does the Gemara ever say that regular Kabbalah Seidus is Ketchilas Din. You know why? Because it's not. Regular Kabbalah Seidus is before the Din Torah starts. Bezdin is gathering the information. Of course, that's something, but they're just gathering information. When does the Din Torah start? When did the Dayanim really sink their teeth into the case? When is the moment when the Dayanim are the ones that the spotlight is on? That's when by Masumata. Before that, the spotlight is on the Eidim. They're the ones that are giving over the information. But those are two separate inyanim. There's Eidim, there's Dayanim. There's two separate inyanim. The Eidim has nothing to do with the Dayanim's function, B'etzem. The Dayanim then step up and they put on their robes, and then they function as Dayanim. Tchilas Din is after Kabbalah Seidus. The Gemara said in Rosh Hashanah, and because of that, says Rashbam, when do you want to do Kabbalah Seidus? Because do whenever you want. Tchilas Din has to be Bayan. Kabbalah Seidus is not Tchilas Din. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that what? Kabbalah Seidus HaChaydish has to be, Kabbalah Seidus HaChaydish is Tchilas Din. Of course Kabbalah Seidus HaChaydish is Tchilas Din. Because you know what's happening when this Kabbalah Seidus HaChaydish? It means that's an Eidus that's redefining the Dayanim. It's all, there's no separation between Eidim and Dayanim anymore. The Eidim are functioning as an extension of the Dayanim themselves. So of course that's Tchilas Din. But that's not a right to anything else. So Rashbam Sheet is L'charetz Kimin Chaimer with the Rashbam. Okay, fine. Fine. Now let's move in for a few minutes into thinking in Pnimis how this, what this means for us. Okay, so in other words, what we're seeing from here with the Yisrael of the Rashbam based on the Avnei Nezer is that there's a chiddush when it comes to Kiddush HaChaydish, which is that Re'iyah and Shmiyah are merging. Re'iyah and Shmiyah are merging. Through Shmiyah, right, the Dayanim are hearing the Din Torah. They're hearing a Kabbalah Seidus from the Eidim. And usually, b'derech klal, in every other Din Torah, Re'iyah is one. The Eidim saw something, they witnessed something with Reuven and Shimon, and then the Dayanim are hearing the Eidus from the Eidim, and they didn't see anything, they're hearing. Two separate inyanim. They believe the Eidim, the Chulu. There's two separate inyanim. The Chiddush of Kiddush HaChodesh, the Avdei Nezer, the Shita Rashbam L'cher, is that what? No. The Shmiya of the Dayanim brings the Re'iyah to them. Shmiya and Re'iyah are mamash one. The Edom are giving over their Re'iyah through Shmiya. The Dayanim are receiving the Re'iyah through Shmiya. It's one inyan. So what does this tell us in Avodas Hashem? What's the premise of this of that idea? So when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, so Kiddush HaChodesh is very much connected with Gula, with Mashiach, with Gula. Right? Everyone knows the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah. I shouldn't say everyone knows, but the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that one of the simanim that Chazal used in order to spread the word, regarding Kiddush HaChodesh and these inyanim is Dov Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kaim. The moon is always representative of Malchus, of the quality of David HaMelech, and when the moon and the Chiddush Alvana, which is Kiddush HaChodesh, and Bezdin says Mekudesh, that's sanctifying. See, it's imbuing, it's investing a quality of what's defined as Kaddish to the Levana. Let's put it this way. Chazal say that the root of all Goliath, I've been talking about this by the Shaivim Shirim, the root of all Goliath is what? Is the Miyat HaYerech, right? The moon becoming diminished. The Miyat HaYerech, the diminishment of the moon, doesn't just mean that it's smaller than the sun. There's a certain level of inconsistency, of constantly up, constantly down, of not being where they're supposed to be. You know what I mean? That's what Miyat HaYerech means. It was supposed to be somewhere. Now it's being schlepped down. And so it's constantly trying to go up, trying to go down. It's this pull towards that place of kviyas, that place of where it's supposed to be. The definition of Kedusha always means where a person's supposed to be, where the madrega is supposed to be. That's always reflective of the sun. The sun means that which is chai v'kaim, that which is kaim, that which is consistent. That's the Kiddush HaYerech means Chazal trying to bring a little bit of that time that was and that will be of where the sun and the moon are one. The opposite, the situation of Miyat HaYerech, where it falls to a place of choil, to a place that's low, to a place that's susceptible to problems. Ragleh Yordis Mavis, that's the opposite of Kedusha. Kedusha always means that which is transcendent, that which is muvdal for something special, untouched, pure. That's Kedusha. Masha'en Kain, the Miyat HaYerech is not just a matter of, again, like I said, it's not just a matter of size. It's symbolic of it descending into a low place. The Chazal always use the pasuk of Ragleh Yordis Mavis. Her feet, in other words, like the moon, descends into death, into a low place. Kiddush HaYerech means not just it's Rosh Chodesh. Kiddush HaYerech means that La'aseh Lavi, what's going to happen is that the moon, which means that which is choil, that which is low, that which is not mufdal and muvrash, is going to reconnect to its original status as Kaddish, as the sun of muvdal and mufrash. And so Kiddush HaChodesh means reflection of Gula, Dov Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kaim. So when we talk about Geula, and that's what Kiddush HaChodesh is a reflection of, there is this inyan of Re'iyah and Shmiya merging as one. Re'iyah and Shmiya merging as one. What do I mean? So the quality of Re'iyah, of seeing something, always is associated with the tzaddik. Always associated with the tzaddik. I spoke about this maybe a few weeks ago by Shal Shudah slightly. It says in Pasuk that Yosef is considered Ben Zekunim. Yosef is called Ben Zekunim. What does it mean Ben Zekunim? So Chazal say, so Pashup Shat, Rashi says he was the son of Yaakov's old age. Targum Onkelos translates what does it mean Ben Zekunim? Bar Chakim. The Yosef Tzaddik was given Chachma. He's the one that has the quality of Chachma. It says in Chazal, Chacham Einav B'roishai. Chacham Einav B'roishai. Chachma is always connected to the quality of Re'iyah. Chachma is connected to the quality of Re'iyah. And Yosef is Yosef Tzaddik, who's the Bar Chakim. So Yosef, the Tzaddik, is connected to Re'iyah. Now that sounds like a Chadgadya, but this is true. You'll find this in the Svarim, that the quality of a Tzaddik, the Avodah of a Tzaddik is connected to the quality of Re'iyah. What do I mean? It means that the Tzaddik is extremely sensitive to the Rebbeinu Shalom's presence, and the Tzaddik has an awareness of the Rebbeinu Shalom's presence, ad kedei kach, that it's a bechin of Re'iyah. And when there's the Avodah of a Tzaddik who's related to that quality of Re'iyah, and that's what Chachma means as well. Chachmas Adam Toyer Panav. Chachma is also associated with or and light, which means clarity and vision. So the quality of Chachma, the quality of being a tzaddik, means a level of avodas Hashem, which is in a state of menucha, in a state of tranquility, a state of clarity. There's something that's obvious. That's called re'iyah. And then you have the opposite of the tzaddik, right? Which is the person that's not a tzaddik, who's striving to become a tzaddik, the avodah of the Baal Tshuva. If the avodah of the tzaddik is a bechin of re'iyah, that's why, again, everyone knows that Yerushalmi and the Zohar Kodesh is ta chazi, come and see. It's a clarity, it's the avodah of the tzaddik. It's a place of clarity, a place of art. If the tzaddik is a bechin of re'iyah, the Baal Tshuva is a bechin of what? Of shmi, of hearing. Ta shema, that's the language of the Bavli. Which means, if re'iyah means das is us, you're already there. It's a avodah of, like the Tanya talks about the quintessential tzaddik's avodah is what? Is a hava b'tanugim. The tzaddik be'etzem means someone who's not climbing towards anything. His avodah is to delight in the experience of being there. That's hava b'tanugim. It's ben olam haba already. That's the avodah of the tzaddik. The tzaddik is re'iyah, menucha. V'yar menucha kitayv. V'yar menucha kitayv. Mashen came the avodah of the Baal Tshuva. The Baal Tshuva is the opposite. The Baal Tshuva is not where he's not where he's supposed to be. Adrabah. He's trying to get there. And so the avodah of the Baal Tshuva is embodied, is represented by shmiyah, is by listening. He's hearing, he's from a distance, and he's trying to follow the sound in order to find something, to get somewhere. And primarily, what motivates the Baal Tshuva is b'derech klal, not the tanug of the re'iyah. He doesn't know what that is. What primarily motivates him is the tsar of the aveira. He's primarily running away, not running towards, because he doesn't know what it is that he's running towards. He knows that that's not good. So he's definitely running away from there. And now, where am I supposed to go if not there? So he picks up on a shmiyah. He picks up on some distant sound of probably, which is coming from probably some tranquil place. So he's looking for that, but he's not there in that state of menucha. So you have this world of where you have the tzaddik on one side, state of menucha conceptually, and then you have the Baal Tshuva on the other side, constant inner movement to try to get somewhere else that's called shmiyah. The tachlis of geula is not to be the tzaddik, nor is it just to be the Baal Tshuva. The tachlis of geula is to unite both the world of the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. The Zohar Kodesh says that the purpose of creation, which is fulfilled with geula, which is expressed by the sun and the moon coming together, is what? Is lahachzer tzadikaya b'tiyufta, to turn tzaddikim into Bali Tshuva. What does that mean? It means that the tzaddik has to do an aveira to then have to do tshuva? No. It means, as we'll see in a second, it means that although the tzaddik's avoida is in that state of menucha, of lisanik, of ahav b'tanugim, but the tzaddik also has to have a sensitivity and awareness that the Rabbanu Shloim that he's sensitive to, there's an oimik, there's an ein soif to that Rabbanu Shloim that he has to continue in that process of discovery. So the tzaddik's main reference certainly is a state of ar and menucha. But the tzaddik can no longer rely on that. The tzaddik also has to take on the motion of the Baal Tshuva, the movement of the Baal Tshuva, in order to propel him deeper and deeper into that re'iyah that he's experiencing. And the same thing it is with the Baal Tshuva, just in the opposite. Whereas the Baal Tshuva's primary, mindset is movement towards, but he also has to remember, and to be told, as we'll see in a second, that even the space within which he's moving is also within the space of the Rabbanu Shloim. So in a certain sense, the tzaddik has to remember, has to incorporate the shmiyah, the hearing, the sense of distance of the Baal Tshuva into his re'iyah, into his menucha. And the Baal Tshuva has to incorporate some level of menucha and sense of tachlis in the movement that he's making towards becoming the person he wants to become. So to a certain degree, in other words, the tachlis is for the tzaddik to realize that he needs to be Baal Tshuva, and the Baal Tshuva to realize that he needs to be the tzaddik. And only when there is this yichud between a absolutely knowable Rabbanu Shloim together with his unknowable side, only do you then get a clear picture of who the Rabbanu Shloim is. Because neither extreme of the tzaddik or the Baal Tshuva really gets it. The Rabbanu Shloim is not something that you can actually point to and say, I know who he is. The tzaddik is wrong. And neither is the Rabbanu Shloim somewhere out there, unknown completely, like the Baal Tshuva. He's also wrong. What is the truth? The truth is the Rabbanu Shloim is everywhere and at the same time completely unknowable. And that is I've mentioned many times. I mean, I've mentioned many times, but I think in the past number of Shir I've mentioned this Nakuda very much, is that the deepest gilui of the Rabbanu Shloim is when the Rabbanu Shloim reveals himself in this way of Ein Aruch Lecha, Efes Biltecha, Mid Doimelach. Those Lashonos that we use on Shabbos, which is again, Shabbos is a day that's Me'en Olam Haba, that's reflective of Gula. It's reflective of when the sun and the moon are united, which is, by the way, also why on Shabbos, when Shabbos falls on Rosh Chodesh, the davening becomes altogether different, of Atikanta, right? Usually, it doesn't work like that. Either keep Shabbos Shemon Esrei and just say Yal V'Yavai, or make Yontif and just make Rosh Chodesh Shemon Esrei and just mention Shabbos. No. Shabbos and his Rosh Chodesh are altogether different. Because the secret of Shabbos is the secret of tasting a little bit of that time where the constant movement of the moon, which is the inyan of the Baal Tshuva, and the consistent visual light of the sun merge together. And that's something that's altogether different. It's altogether different. It's not like this, it's not like that. It's a deeper revelation of what Shabbos is, of Ein Aruch Lecha, Midayim Lach, Efes Biltecha, of the Rabbanu Shloim being both everywhere and completely unknown at the same time. And that's the deepest gilui of all. That is the ultimate gilui of Yemais Mashiach, of Gula itself, of Ben Olam Haba, where the Baal Tshuva and the Tzaddik, it's almost indiscernible between the two of them. And this is the depth of what we know that Chazal say that, Sinas Chinam destroy the Beis HaMikdash, which the Mela means that Avas Chinam is going to bring the Beis HaMikdash back. We tend to think of that in very, very superficial terms. And don't get me wrong, even the superficial Taicha things is an avoida, but it means to love each other. You shouldn't fight. Asking. But in the deepest level, the ultimate sinas achem and sinas chinam is the breakdown between these two worlds of tzaddik and Baal Tshuva, between Yosef and Yehuda. That dynamic, that machlokes, that first machlokes that took place, the first sinas chinam was the sun and the moon. The moon didn't say anything not nice to the sun, and the sun didn't say anything not nice to the moon, but they didn't really like each other. Not so interested. So there was the beginning of sinas chinam really in its root is this breakdown between the sun and the moon, between the consistent visual menucha, das is das, kaddish, muvdal, without change, without needing to go anywhere else. The sun, tzaddik, and the constant upheaval and movement and uncertainty of the moon, which is about tshuva. The disconnect between the two, that's galus. But Havas Yisrael and Havas Chinam, in its root, means to bring together the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. And so to bring together the tzaddik and Baal Tshuva means, as we'll see in a second, it means the tzaddik to remember that he's not as close as he thinks he is. And for the Baal Tshuva to remember he's not as far as he thinks he is. And when we can bring those two worlds together, that's Havas Yisrael. That's yichud between the sun and the moon. That's connecting, hearing, which is from a distance, and seeing, which means das is das, menucha, you've got it, you're at their place. Tzaddik and Baal Tshuva together. Kiddush HaChodesh, which is a secret of what? Of Imakadosh the new moon, of saying about the moon, which seems to be an upheaval. Mekudesh, you're holy, you're moved on mufresh. Somehow you're going to get to that place, just like the sun is in that place of pristine clarity and truth. You're going to get there too. We don't just, that doesn't just mean that there's not going to be the Baal Tshuva and it's only going to be the tzaddik. It means that the Shmiya, which is the Baal Tshuva, is united with the Re'iyah of the tzaddik. And the Re'iyah of the tzaddik is united with the Shmiya of the Baal Tshuva. And this reflects itself in halacha, right? That's what I'm saying. Is that the Re'iyah of the Eidim transfers to the Dayanim through the Shmiya. In other words, that Shmiya and Re'iyah, you can't even tell the difference. That's when this parasha, right, by Har Sinai, which was a moment at least, of maybe there was going to be that moment of yichud completely, right, of the sun and the moon coming together. So Roim es HaKolos, right, what was usually heard, they saw, was usually saw, they heard. That was the yichud of those two things. Chazal could have given many examples of strange things happening. But that's the Nekuda. That was the inyan of Shmi and Riyah coming together. Take a look at Marmukah number 7, and there's a Torah from Rabbi Nachman, at least this part of it you'll see. So this is in Chelik Beis, Siman Zayin. So Menachem writes, he's talking, it's a whole tire over there. It's hard even to like be magdu exactly what he's talking about. It's a moving train. But over there, Rabbi Nachman says, Bechinas Shafa Keser. In order to be Zaycha to the crown, Keser is always a code word for the highest. It's always a code word for a Gula. Malchus Beis David, Chazaras Malchus Beis David. Ultimately, the ultimate Keser goes back to what? To the sun and the moon, Mishtamshin Bekeser Echad. So in order to have that Keser, which is Gula, which is sun and the moon coming together, which is Kiddush HaChodesh, Tzarech Sheyilei Bechinas Kol. Then you have to have a quality of everything. What does it mean, everything? Bechinas, like the pasuk says, Ki Kol Bashamayim Uvaretz. Everything means, Kol means Shamayim and Aretz together. The Targumai, whereas the Targum translates, Ta'achid B'Shamayim V'Aretz. Hainu, meaning, Shia Oiches U'Makayim Shnei Oilamis. You have to be able to bring together and exist in two worlds. Shem Oilam HaElyon, Oilam HaTachton. What does that mean, higher world and lower world? Ki Yesh Dari Ma'ala V'Yesh Dari Mat. It's a famous Torah. There are those that live above, there are the dwellers from above, and there are those that dwell below. Hainu. Oilam HaElyon Oilam HaTachton, it means a higher world and lower world, B'Chnei Shmai V'Aretz. V'tzarech HaTzadik Laharis L'Dari Ma'ala. In others, what does it mean, Dari Ma'ala, those that dwell above? That means it's Tzadik. What does it mean, Dari Mat, to those that dwell below? That means the person that's trying to become the Baal Tshuva. So he says like this: V'tzarech HaTzadik, the Tzadik who has to be koil, the Achid B'Shmai V'Ara, so he has to do the following thing: Laharis L'Dari Ma'ala. He has to show the Tzadik, the one that lives above, She'ein Yodim Klal B'Yidas Yisparach, the God that you think you know, the one that you think you see, B'china V'Riyah, of Chacham Ein of B'Roishai. Such a person, the tzaddik shows, you don't really know much. You have to show the tzaddik that the hasaga that he has is really a hasaga of nothing. It's a hasaga of nothing, you don't know. What did you see? What do you know? That you have to bring to the tzaddik a sense of, I don't know where the Rebbeinu Shalom is. And then fakert. You then have to go to the Baal Tshuva and say, to what? You know the Rebbeinu Shalom. You've met him before. You've met him all the time. You know who he is. And said Rabbi Nachman, only when you're able to speak to the Dari Mata and say Molas Kavaydai, and speak to the Dari Mala and say I am a Kain Kavaydai, only then are you Zaycha to Keser. What does that mean? Stam, you're just like lying to people. The answer is no. This is the aside. The deepest gil of the Rebbeinu Shalom is that he's everywhere, but always unknowable. Once we're thinking of the Rebbeinu Shalom in more like physical terms or even conceptual terms, then already you're putting him somewhere. And look, I get it. Then he's not somewhere else. The Rebbeinu Shalom is everywhere, and because he's everywhere, he's absolutely unknowable and almost nowhere at the same time. And that exactly is the deepest gila of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's called Keser. That's called Gula. This is what Chazal say, that tzaddikim ein la menucha even in olam haba. They don't have menucha in olam haba. Chazal, many places in Tanakh, Chazal describe olam haba as tzaddikim yoshin, betrasem berashem, and mizaveshkim. They're sitting and just deriving benefit from the divine presence. Sitting always means a state of menucha. Chazal say ein la menucha in olam haba. The answer is it's both together, because the secret of olam haba is Dari Mata with Dari Mala, the tzaddik with the Baal Tshuva. There's constant movement, but you're moving in the same space. You're just trying to find the Rebbeinu Shalom who is already in front of you, just deeper. That's what it means, tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. That's called Ri and Shmiya together. That's the secret of Kiddush HaChodesh. This is why, again, this is the Kiddush HaChodesh was the first mitzvah that was given to us as a people, right? So there's always a call from our tzaddik that you want to make, sort of make these parallels. The first of something is always the shirish, the reishis. So we have two reishises. We have two mitzvahs in Targum mitzvahs that in a certain sense are our first mitzvahs. You have the first mitzvah given to us as a people, b'chalal, that's Kiddush HaChodesh. But then you have the first mitzvah that's given to us with what? On Har Sinai, which is like technically the first mitzvah of Torah in terms of Har Sinai, which is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the mitzvah of Emunah. So what does Kiddush HaChodesh have to do with Emunah? Well, the answer is the mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha is the Rebbeinu Shalom saying, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the Aleph. This is who I am. Anonavshik Savitz Yavis, the deepest gili of the Rebbeinu Shalom, to believe in the Rebbeinu Shalom in the fullest sense. And what does Emunah mean? Emunah means that the Rebbeinu Shalom is both Ayim K'ayim K'vaydai and Malek Lords K'vaydai. The deepest gili of the Rebbeinu Shalom in Anochi Hashem Elokecha is what? Is when the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva merge. Kiddush HaChodesh is giving us a Pesach into Anochi Hashem Elokecha. They both reflect each other. The way to experience Anochi Hashem Elokecha is through the concept of Kiddush HaChodesh, which means to merge together the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva. Only when a person is able to look at two yidden, let's put practical Halacha Maisa. You see two yidden, right? One yid never put tefillin on in his life, and the other yid is like, wears tefillin all day. It's pretty different from each other. But the only way to really merge them is to say like this: listen, the guy that's putting on tefillin that wears tefillin all day. What tefillin be'emes and pnimius, what tefillin are, the moichin, the kedusha, the guy never put on tefillin in his life. And then the yid that never put physically tefillin on in his life, of course he has to put on tefillin. But when you realize that, that every mitzvah is just a piece of the neshama itself. It's a piece of the Rabbanu Shloim, and it's a piece of the Chelik L'Kam Mamish. Of course, he has tefillin. You don't see it. He has tefillin. And so that, because what are tefillin? Tefillin, there's are infinite levels to tefillin. Infinite levels to tefillin. And so when we're miyached those two, and sort of you can begin to see all Yidden in that same playing field. We're all just searching. We're all just looking for the truth, looking for the Rabbanu Shalom. Okay, so in that infinite ocean of depth, so one person is 5 meters in, another person is 4 meters in. It's an afkimin. You're talking about infinite depth. So either you're in the ocean, and we're all in the ocean, or you're talking about getting to the bottom of the ocean. None of us are in the bottom of the ocean. Okay, so when you have that type of mindset, that's a gula de kamaychen. That's a meichin where a person, that's a kiddush hachodesh de kavoida, and then you're able to then experience in your life the Anochi Hashem Elokecha, where the Rabbanu Shalom allows you to experience Him onto whatever level is possible, because you're someone that is relating to the world and to other yidden in such a way of being meyached, tzaddik and Baal Tshuva, which comes from this idea of the Rabbanu Shalom being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And that's the ultimate gilui of where Gula comes from. So Rabbanu Shalom should help us to love each other and to have Avos Yisrael, Be'emes, Avos Chin in the deepest of senses, and to miyached it too, and to see everyone as just basically just trying their best and just trying to serve the Rabbanu Shalom, to find themselves and to find the Rabbanu, to keep a mitzvah. That's the biggest dream that every yid should just have. That at one time in their life they should be able to do a mitzvah. So that's it. Okay.